Welcome to Southern Sense Talk on Rumble. You are going to love Annie the Radio Chickadee Ubelis and her co-host, C.S. Bennett. You'll find them live here on Fridays from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Date Time. Check out their website at Southern Sense, as in commonsense.net. It's that easy, southernsense.net. So sit back and relax. They're informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey.
There we go. Welcome back to another episode on Southern Sense. I'm your hostess with the least mostest, Annie the Chickadee. We've been having some technical difficulties here today, so I do apologize. It seems like it was a rough beginning, but we got ourselves a lot to talk about and a heck of a lot to do. So once again, I do apologize for the rough opening. Anyway, defecation occurs, and it's usually right on top of my head. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot to do. We have great guests coming in. To begin with, we have Ken Abramowitz. He has a website called Save the West. He has a new book out called The Teeth and Straight Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, Pandemics, and Racial Strife. So he'll be joining us at the start of the show. And our second guest is going to be John Gordon. He has his own podcast called Truth with John. We had him on a while back, 2 years ago, actually, believe it or not. No, actually, I think we had him about maybe 6 or 7 months ago. But he was running for Attorney General in the state of Georgia. Unfortunately, he didn't win, but hey, you never know. Maybe he'll make a comeback. But he's going to be joining us a little bit later on. He's got a lot of new stuff he's working on, so we're going to discuss that with him. I do have a guest co-host who should be joining me shortly. Hannah is not with us today. She had some appointments she could not break. So our thoughts are with her, and she will be back next week. Matter of fact, we're going to have something next week that may be just a little bit different. There's a friend of ours, actually a friend of Curtis's, C.S. Bennett. She had recently lost her son, who was in the military, and she wants to talk about what has happened and what the family has been going through and what it really means to go through these types of circumstances. It is a very interesting, very heartwarming, and at times leave you in tears. But I think it's important the public knows what is going on with these Gold Star families, the stuff that is going on behind the scenes in certain circumstances. So we'll be having this young lady joining us next week, and Hannah will be back with us. So much to go on, so much that is to do on the news today. You just can't make some of this stuff up. Mayor Mondami, the mayor of New York City, made the great mistake of going to Staten Island, which is one of the 5 boroughs in the city of New York. And it is the only one of all 5 boroughs that is solidly conservative and solidly Republican. And Mondami thought he would get these waving cheers like he gets in Manhattan and Brooklyn and the Bronx. But no, that didn't quite happen here. He got booed off the island of Staten. Staten Island booed him off. And unfortunately, I don't think he tucked his tail by going on the Staten Island ferry. But he left the scene. That shit-eating grin he always has on his face went with him. No loss, no loss. Anyway, because we have all these little things going on today, I'm going to start something off a little bit earlier. It looks like my co-host is trying to sign in, but he has to adjust his camera. While he works on that, those that watch our show know that we start off each and every show with a dedication to a fallen hero. And we tried to do that last week, and that was 2 weeks in a row. We had a bad start to doing the dedication. So I thought we would redo this one again. So today's dedication is going to go out to Corporal Barry James Faust of the Arlington County Police Department of Virginia. His end of watch was Friday, May 22nd, 2026. And this is the dedication that I had originally planned for him last week, and we will play it today. God bless him and his family.
In Northern Virginia, heavy hearts all across the region as an Arlington County Police Corporal dies from cancer as a result from responding on September 11th. The department announcing the line of duty death is saying that Corporal Barry Foust died Friday. The 35-year veteran was on patrol when the American Airlines plane hit the Pentagon nearly 25 years ago and remained there on the scene collecting evidence of the remains of victims for weeks. He was diagnosed with cancer related to the recovery efforts last June. And Arlington County is saying that this is their second line of duty cancer death from the terrorist attack.
Long-term impact of September 11th is hitting home again in Arlington. Today, a veteran police officer who responded to the Pentagon attack will be laid to rest after dying from a 9/11 related cancer.
Jacqueline Quinn is live outside Arlington County Police headquarters this morning. And Jacqueline, he's the second Arlington officer to die from an illness linked to the attacks.
Yeah, and Corporal Barry Foust was also the 8th law enforcement officer to die in the line of duty here in Arlington County. So at 10:30 a.m., we expect to see the procession that is going to be coming through here near the headquarters. There's going to be a 21-gun salute, and then this procession will head to Cherrydale Baptist Church for his service. Now, this all goes back to what happened on 9/11 in 2001. Foust was on patrol in Arlington when American Airlines Flight 77 hit the Pentagon. Now, he immediately reported information over the radio, helping launch Arlington County's response. He then spent days at the crash site collecting evidence and recovering victims' remains. 2 decades later, he was diagnosed with a cancer linked to that exposure. Now, we spoke with Faust's former attorney, Michael Barash, about the message he hoped others would take from Faust's experience and a reminder of the ongoing health challenges many 9/11 responders are facing decades later.
And it isn't just World Trade Center, because the same toxins occurred at the Pentagon, where the jet fuel from the plane that hit the concrete Pentagon created the exact same toxic brew of lethal chemicals as the people who were exposed at the World Trade Center.
And part of the message here from that attorney is that there are programs available, federal programs, to help those who were exposed to some of these chemicals and illnesses that were related to the exposure and cancers from 9/11 through the federal government, federal programs that will help pay for health care, no cost to some of those people who, again, have been affected. For now, in Arlington, I'm Jacqueline Quinn, WSA 9.
Well, to your point, there is data showing deaths from 9/11 related cancer and illness has surpassed the number of lives lost on the day of the terrorist attacks. Jacqueline Quinn reporting for us this morning. Thank you.
In Virginia, community members remembering an Arlington County police officer who died from cancer. Corporal Barry Foust was one of the first responders on 9/11. Foust was on duty on the morning of September 11th, and he headed straight to the Pentagon after a plane crashed into it. He helped collect evidence and the remains of victims in the days after. Well, last June, Foust was diagnosed with cancer related to those recovery efforts. At the service, his sister Libby recalled several memories of her older brother.
When he became sick, our whole world collapsed. He was our only brother, the brother I tinkered with out in the bus garage and chatted with about what we were going to fix on the farm. The brother I grew up with having fist fights with after he changed the channel on the TV. The brother I admired and enjoyed. The brother I loved. The brother we loved.
Well, Foust served more than 30 years with Arlington County Police.
Oh, sorry about that, folks. Here we go.
Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, we led with grace. Let it be seen, from sea to shining sea, legacy. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother. Oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be known as people of honor, humble and bold, faithful through fire. Let us hold firm to our convictions with wide open hearts, eager to listen. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother. Oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us make room. Let us reimagine welcoming voices with true compassion. Let's craft a world with hopes and dreams, challenges known and those still unseen. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother. Oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be sure when our time has come, we gave them hope, we made them strong. Let it be said when we finish this race, we kept them free, yeah, we led with grace. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother. Oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let it be said. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother. Oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation.
All right, for those tuning in, know we start off each and every show with a dedication to a fallen hero, whether they are law enforcement, firefighters, emergency services, or the military that have served this nation from its birth through today and into our hopeful future. God bless each and every one of them. That said, we don't have Hannah with us today, but we do have a friend of mine that I've known for quite a few years, Dan Perkins. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
All right. So the audience knows you have your own media conglomerate, should I say?
That's true. That's true. I do.
Yeah, and you're all over the place because you're well up in demand on as a commentator on issues. I met you when you had one of your first books out, which was a trilogy. You now have 12 books out,
Right.
and the latest one is with Sheriff Richard Mack, and is the Democratic Murder of America. And when you look at today, it is so apropos. Tell us about your book.
The book is a result of my writing commentary, and the one particular issue that I wrote more commentary than anything else was the murder rate in Chicago, and the number of people that could be killed on a holiday weekend or a regular weekend, and the number of children who would be killed in their beds because of stray bullets coming through the windows. And I kept writing these commentaries, and I kept talking to Black people all over the country. Why isn't anything happening? I mean, Chicago for 13 years in a row was the #1 murder city in the United States, 13 years in a row, controlled by Democrats for decades. Why aren't they doing anything about it? And that really started me thinking about looking at the Democratic Party perhaps in a different light. And I started looking and writing about violence as a core tenet of the Democratic Party. And as I went back to its original roots was the Democrat-Republican Party in the United States, which was formed in 1790. They survived until 1820 when the Democrats bolted and collapsed the party. The Republicans went away, replaced by the Whigs, and the Democratic Party in 1878 was chartered by the Congress as a national institution. And from that time on, that party, the Democratic Party, has become a place where murder, rape, intimidation, fear, all of these things have been the primary tenets of the Democratic Party. And there were so many things that I found that I didn't know about, and the sheriff too. So we started writing this book, and we're like 36 chapters, each one different of an example of violence of the Democratic Party in the last almost 200 years. And so we decided to write the book together. I had interviewed him on another show, and I called him with my idea and told him what I wanted to do, and he says, "I'm in." And we started writing, and one of the interesting points was that we wanted to have it out before the midterm elections because we believed it was a book that the American voters needed to read. It's a factual account of history of violence in the Democratic Party, and they needed to understand because many people, the most common comment that we have about the book from people who have gotten it and read it, I didn't know most of the stuff that was in the book. I was not aware of it. I mean, for example, for 100 years after the Civil War, the Black people in this country were Republican. And the Democrats, under FDR, when we had the Great Depression, began to establish the use of the Chinese saying, give a man a fish, he feeds himself for the day. Teach a man a fish, and he can feed himself for the rest of his life. The Democratic Party, almost from its beginnings, has been in the position of only giving people one fish a day. Because if you taught that person to become independent and taught them that they could be self-sustaining, you didn't have any need for the Democratic Party. Right. So what happened was that after the Civil War, the Democratic Party lost because they were primarily in the South. And in order to gain control, even after the officers in the military and the government leaders were banned for running from elections, they figured out a way in which to begin to intimidate through fear by the establishment of the Ku Klux Klan.
But there I have a little side note, because are you aware of the history that South Carolina had to do with that? We had a Confederate officer who actually was a senator in the state legislation, Tillman. His name was Tillman. Matter of fact, he came close to beating a fellow senator on the floor to death with his cane.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the one that created the red shirts, which led to the Ku Klux Klan.
Mm-hmm.
And his mantra was, every Democrat out there must control 3 black votes.
Mm-hmm.
So when they showed up at the polls, they then controlled the votes. So even though the person they believed in the Republican Party, they were forced to vote the way the Tillman's red shirts forced them to vote.
Right. And so you had, in the beginning, when we had the Revolutionary War, the South was not in favor of it because England was its largest customer for Southern cotton and tobacco. And they felt that if they went to war with England, they would lose their business from England. And as a result, their treasure and their property would be worthless. And they had all these slaves that they had to feed. And so they were totally against the Revolutionary War. They lost. And we come forward to prior to the Civil War, and the Democratic Party, again, because they were not very good stewards of the land, because they were growing too much cotton and tobacco year after year after year, decided they wanted to move west to the Virgin Territory of the Western areas, and they wanted to take slaves with them and keep them slaves in the territory. And so they were against the Civil War because if they couldn't move around with their slaves and they got into war, they would lose their ability, because surely the new president, if he wasn't a Democrat, he was a Republican, they would take away their rights to sell and grow crops that could make them keep their fortunes running. So they entered into the war to protect their property, and that part of that property were black slaves. When they lost, then there were the 12th, 13th, and 14th, and 15th Amendment, which gave freedom and other areas of rights to the black people. But as I said, Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was a delegate to the Democratic Convention of 1860, was the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, which turned into a extremely violent organization. And at the same time, in order to try and get more control, the Democrats were the people that were able to get through the various state legislature Jim Crow laws, which made it more and more difficult for the black people to vote. And in the period from about 1887 to 1950, under the Jim Crow laws, as best we can count, there were 4,000 black men who were hung in the South. However, this is a statistic that most people never heard before. 1,200 abolitionists came from the North to help the black people protect their rights and get their rights. And 1,200 of those white Republicans were also hung during the same period of time. And people will read those things and many other things where there's stuff in there. And I do have one more, but why didn't I learn this? Because the Democrats had control of the education system almost from the beginning, and they were not going to teach those things, where the fact that they were actually murderers and rapists and slaveholders. And so we felt it was important, since it wasn't taught in the schools, that this has to be a history book of violence in the history of the Democratic Party. And it's just as prevalent today as it was in 1878.
You know, it's funny because when I was going to school, all these things I learned, even though it was a public school. But today, you're lucky if they even understand or know there's a Constitution and Declaration of Independence that actually outlines our rights that we have bestowed upon us by God, not by man.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're seeing our entire youth coming up to age and voting, and we see this rise of the Democratic Socialists of America. And you wonder why, because they never understood fully what their freedoms that they're enjoying right now, this moment, are, and how precious they are, and how soon they'll lose it. With that said, Dan, we've got our first guest joining us. I want to
Okay.
welcome to the show Kenneth Abramowitz. How you do? Well, he was here. Now he's not here. Okay, Ken, it looks like you dropped yourself out. Okay, hopefully that he'll come back on. That was real quick. You know, I don't know. There's some days everything goes perfectly smoothly, and there
Right.
are other days that no matter how hard you try, everything goes wrong.
Right. That's the beauty of technology. When it works, it's great, and when it doesn't, it's terrible.
I mean, I went through 3 different headsets until I went back to my regular studio headset and finally got it to work.
Mm,
I don't. There's a gremlin in my computer that changes the settings. I swear.
right.
I swear. So I think that gremlin just jumped.
It's probably a Democrat.
Yeah. So let's try this once again. All right. We got Kenneth Abramowitz with us. He's
There he
the
is.
founder of SaveTheWest.com. Ken, we were talking about today. It seems like there are gremlins, and they're probably Democratic gremlins in our computers that are fouling everything up today. Can you hear me? Nope. Ken, can you hear me? I don't think he can hear me. And nope. His microphone's on, Ken. All right. He has no sound. Let me see if I don't know if I can send him a private chat. Okay. Supposed to be able to do this. Okay. All right. You have no sound. So forgive me, guys. Just sending this over to Ken. Hopefully he'll see that. We can try again because he's trying to adjust his cameras. We'll give him a few more moments with that. But it's like I said, anything that can go wrong will go wrong today.
Right.
Oh man, but you know, I find it not amusing, but disheartening, honestly. However, I got to say one thing about the pandemic. The only thing it did, it woke up a lot of parents across America who pulled their kids out of school and decided to homeschool them during the pandemic. And when they found what their children are not learning, they started to make these little groups up of homeschoolers. Started sending the kids to charter schools, traditional religious schools, um, traditional uh, academic schools that would teach history, reading, and writing. And I don't know how many kids today are graduating high school without a second grade reading level.
Yeah, it's a very significant percentage, and some of the people in the education business, not all, but some say, well, that's just the reality. And if you were a parent at the time when things were going on, there's Ken. Can you hear us?
Yes. Now we have. Hey, I think Dan and I were saying there are certain days that everything technically can go wrong, will go wrong, and today is one of those days.
Okay, but I'm here.
Well, welcome back, Ken. I had so much stuff I want to talk to you as soon as I saw your face and just went straight out of the window. Oh, Dan was talking about the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and the Democratic Party, and we now have the Democratic Party. There are people like John Fetterman that are getting fed up and saying, we need to split away, or I'm going to go independent, I'm going to do something else. But the Democratic Party is becoming something we don't recognize. I would say the Democratic Party about 40 or 50 years ago wasn't what my grandparents would have recognized. So it has changed. It used to be the party of the working man, and now it's become the party of the Soviet Union.
You're being kind, so I'm not so kind as you. So let me try to give you my opinion. The Civil War of 1861-65, we thought ended with the victory of the North against the South, or in political terms, the Republicans against the Democrats. Now, the Democrats at that time were called Confederates. So after the war, they changed the name to Democrats. They didn't change their thinking. They didn't change their contempt for the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. They just changed their name. So in my mind, we're still fighting the Civil War, that the Civil War never ended. We thought, the North thought it ended, but the South didn't think that it ended. And so now we're seeing the revenge of the South. Now, the Southern Confederates moved north, and so now the Democrats are in the North mostly, but they still think like their Confederate ancestors in the South. So that's one problem we have. Another problem we have is that about over the past 50 years, our foreign enemies have penetrated our K through 12 schools, our teachers' colleges, and our universities. Now, our foreign enemies, I color code the reds, the greens, and the blues. The reds are the communists, greens are the Islamists, blues are the globalists, color coded blue for the United Nations colors. So the reds, the greens, and the blues have infiltrated the Democrat / Confederate Party over the past 50 to 100 years. And now we're contending with a Confederate Party on steroids. And that's called the Democrat Socialists of America, and who I think should be declared an illegal criminal organization. And the Muslim Brotherhood also. These two have infected our politics and our schools, and we're not doing enough about it. And we have to do something about it because we have no obligation to allow our foreign enemies to take over our country through the Confederate Democrat Socialists of America pretend imposter American Party.
Now, something I wanted to look up last night, and I apologize I didn't do it, but I had a little tickling in the back of my mind. I seem to remember there's still a law on the books. I believe it dates back to 1954, and it's never been enforced, that said that if you are a declared member of the Communist Party, that you cannot run for any federal office.
Yes, and I recollect someone also mentioned that to me, but nobody talks about it anymore. So I would apply that to the Democrat Socialists of America and accuse them of being a communist subversive party and not allow any of their candidates to run. And I would close down the organization. Their website says they have 120,000 members. I don't think we have to imprison 120,000 people, but all organizations like this have 10 criminals running the organization. We should find who the 10 criminals are and indict and imprison or deport them.
You know, Dan has a show that I do with him, a podcast once a week called Moms Across America. And some of this we were talking on your show just this past Wednesday, weren't we, Dan?
Yeah. You know, Ken, I want to make a little statement, that I want to ask you a question. We just talked before you came on about my new book, Democrat and Murder of America.
Nice title.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Where do you see the cover? What I said and have continued to say about what's going on in this book is that the Democratic Party is the party of violence and has been from its foundings. But following what you were talking about, I believed in January, when the pundits were all suggesting that the Democrats, because of an off-year election, were going to take control of the House. And I said, I don't think so. I don't think they'll have it. I think there's too radical for a lot of people. And they've only gotten downhill since then. And so I believe that they're going to lose the midterm election, and we're going to see the left Democrats turn on the moderate Democrats, and we're going to see blood in the streets. And I believe right now that the Democratic Party, the Confederate Party, as you call it, I believe they're in a civil war against each other.
Yes, but because they're basically run by thugs, either physical thugs or intellectual thugs, that they basically are rolling over the, assuming there's not such a thing as a normal Democrat, let's say traditional Democrats, they're rolling over the traditional Democrats and accusing them of being ineffective, which they are, and saying that only the socialist, progressive, which I call regressive, I also call them pagans. They're so violent, either physically or culturally, or that they intimidate the regular Democrats, and that's a problem. And that's one of the reasons I don't think they should be allowed to run. It's like having pretend the mafia party the mafia had a party, okay, and it was part of either Democrats or Republicans. They would put pressure on the regular Republicans, let's just say, and say, either think the way I think, or you'll have cement shoes and you'll be swimming with the fishes. And you go, okay, I don't want to swim with the fishes. What do you want me to do? And or how about if the Nazi Party were a third of the Republican Party, and it would intimidate the other 2/3. And so that's why you can't have these cancerous parties with alien ideologies opposed to everything America stands for, allowed to run. You know, there's always rules in life, whether it's in a tennis club or a city or a company. There's always rules. When someone, can you imagine you're looking for a job at some company and they say, why do you work here? Why do you want this job? Oh, I hate this company. You go, you what? Oh yeah, I hate this company. I hate what you do. I hate your profit structure. I hate everything you do. So why do you expect us to give you a job? We're not going to give you a job. That's right. And we shouldn't give these people jobs when they are hateful and determined to destroy our country. We don't have an obligation to allow foreign enemies to run for office and destroy the country. Why?
Well, I'm sorry, but we have someone like Mandami, who is not. I don't even question. I question whether or not he's even a citizen based upon his immigration status.
He
Who is now
lied.
mayor? Yeah, now mayor of New York.
Yeah.
And God bless Staten Island. He went to Staten Island, and Staten Island is solid red.
Right.
It's the last bastion of red.
And
Unless you go over to Nassau County, they booed him off the island.
Right. Very good. I'm very proud of them. But
Ted
Mamdani
Norris.
is a poster child. He's been a citizen for 7 years, and he became a citizen by lying on his application. Now you could say, how would I know that? I haven't even seen his application. But I just know that if he said on the application that he's, my terminology, a red, a green, and a blue. In other words, I'm a communist, I'm an Islamist, and I'm a globalist. I hate the Constitution. I hate the Bill of Rights. I want to destroy this country. I hate Christians. I hate Jews. I want to Islamize the country. And he wouldn't have become a citizen. They would say, hey, buddy, go back to Uganda. You don't fit in here. Okay? Right. So he got his citizenship on false premises. And I think and I wrote an article on my website at the time, savethewest.com, saying that President Trump should take away his citizenship, arrest him, and deport him. Now, President Trump, being a very logical guy, made a decision to embrace or pretend to embrace Mamdani, probably figuring that Mamdani had a 100% chance of failing. And President Trump said, okay, let's let him fail and set an example to all the other red, green, and blue demagogues, and that'll be good for the country when he fails. I personally would have deported him before that. I mean, now what he's doing is he's violating the rights of 90% of the citizens, the 80% who are Christians, the 10% who are Jewish. And I don't think we should sit back and allow a red, a green, and a blue Islamist, basically illegal immigrant, beat up directly or indirectly on Christians and Jews. I think we have to protect Christians and Jews because we're a Judeo-Christian country. And that's what our function in life is, to protect Judeo-Christian culture.
Ken, last week, Pew Research released a survey of Democratic voters. 73% of those voters said they would vote for a communist.
Okay, so now I have two answers for that. if I had the power, I would call up the director, Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, and say, let's start reading history books throughout the country. Ask every single state to send in 2 sample history books to Washington, have someone read them, someone like me, I would volunteer to do that. Read 100 books in 1 week, or read, through them 100 books, and create a book report of what are the state of our history books, what are we teaching our collective children? That would be a very good exercise. The second thing that I'm calling for is, and I learned this from the COVID days, we should have body cams on all teachers in America, in any public institution. Let the parents see what nonsense these pretend teachers are teaching. There's an expression, sunshine is the best disinfectant. So I think it's time to apply sunshine to our educational system. And those are 2 suggestions that I have.
Okay, thank you.
If I remember correctly, isn't New Jersey one of the only states that doesn't require the teachers to have a certificate? You know what I'm trying to say, certification.
Right. I'll take your word for it. Now, by the way, since the certification is done by Reds, Greens, and Blues, I don't know if it matters if they have a certification. Now, if they made me the certifying body, just pretend, then I would say, yes, they need to be certified by me. But no, nobody's designated me for that role just yet.
Oh, man. I mean, there's so many areas in which for us to go on. And we're looking at all the stuff that's going on and the rise of socialism within the Democratic Party. And it's not covert, it's now completely overt. And yet you have some of them are so off the wall wacky to the left that they actually make Mondami look normal. And that is scaring the crap out of me, honestly.
Well, I came up with another suggestion. This was also on my website, SaveTheWest.com, is that all the bad guys, the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues, they have certain characteristics in common. They hate basically anybody who's not them, but they hate the rule of law. They hate the Constitution, hate the Bill of Rights. They also hate the Bible. The Old Testament, the New Testament doesn't matter to them. They hate the Bible. They hate the concept of God, our Judeo-Christian God, and they particularly hate Jews and Christians, but they focus on hating Jews because Jews are only 2% of the population. So it's easier to say I hate Jews than to say I hate Christians, because Christians are 90% of the population. So I have a theory that we have to criminalize anti-Semitism, and in particular, criminalize incitement to genocide, and use that as a mechanism to go after these foreign alien ideologies, all of whom are anti-Semitic, and basically say, if you're inciting genocide against Jews, even though Jews are only 2% of the population, we're going to criminalize that and put you in jail, or if you're here illegally, we're going to deport you. That would be one, I would call it an easy way to go after these foreign ideologies, by taking a key element of their ideology away from them and say, you cannot use your anti-Semitism to preach genocide against Jews. And that's just the camel's nose in the tent, as they say. And we're going to criminalize that and shut you down. That would be a good way to go after these foreign agents.
But don't we already have that? There was an amendment that dealt. No. It was the Act of 1865, I believe, stating that you could not discriminate against people because of their race or religion. It dealt with, the Ku Klux Klan going after blacks, but it didn't mention blacks. It just mentioned, by race. And Dan, we've talked about this, and it's sitting in the back of. Oh, yeah, it was called the Ku Klux Klan of 1865. That it does criminalize if you go after a person's religion or attack their religious institution. It's on the books. So we had in New York, I believe it was Manhattan, they firebombed a synagogue. And they had a bunch of people that were leaving synagogue, and as they're leaving, they're being attacked. So that should fall underneath the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1865. You have a reason to go after them.
Sure. Well, what you just mentioned, and that what you mentioned a few minutes ago, relative to communists. Yes, if we have these laws on the books that everyone's forgotten about, let's revive them. And because it's so difficult to pass a law nowadays, if you can just take a law that already exists and say, yes, I'm going to follow through on that. I think the FBI is not doing its job. The FBI is sleeping, and I think. I like Kash Patel, but I don't know what he's doing. And because we have subversive organizations all over the place, I call this cultural warfare. When people fight with words, I call it cultural war. When they fight with knives and guns, I call that obviously physical war. And I just wrote an article. It's just coming actually next week on cultural warfare and how we have to criminalize cultural warfare within the confines of freedom of speech, but criminalize cultural warfare. And we don't know how to do that, but we better learn how to do it, because otherwise these thugs will basically intimidate the average Democrat or even the average Republican.
Well, Dan, on your show, Moms Across America, the last one we did, I mentioned something about maybe the liberal media is starting to have a change of heart, because I mentioned something that NPR had put out. And now the New York Times seems to be moving a little bit more towards the right than from their extreme left. Because they had a recent article, and I pulled it up, it's in my stack here somewhere, where they were criticizing some of the things that Mandami was doing in the city. And they're sort of like looking at this saying, wait a minute, maybe we've gone a little bit too far. Are we seeing media now starting to take a second look at stuff?
That's a good question. I think that the networks, in my opinion, are in turmoil. They've lost a lot of listeners to alternative through this social media, but they still try to be biased against Donald Trump and the Republicans. And the Republicans, certain Republicans who are being interviewed by these mainstream media liberals, are making statements, and the liberals are calling them out, said, no, you're wrong. And probably the best at it right now is Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He doesn't take crap from anybody. And but I think, you know, I've said if the Democrats lose the midterm, meaning they lose seats in the House, there will be a civil war between the internals of the Democratic Party. But I also think that if they do lose it, they've got 2 years to try and recover. And I think one of the things that will become a party platform for the Democratic Party is planks against Israel and its support. And I don't think they'll outright call for genocide for the Jewish people, but the Jewish people will come under a significant attack for their actions in the leadership of the Democratic Party. And I suspect that that's going to create a problem, because I could give you a scenario that you could have black leaders who say, okay, you want to ostracize Jewish people because you don't want them in the party. Who's next? Are we next because we're not voting as much as we did for Democrats? Are the Democrats going to continue to destroy their party by eliminating minority groups and think that they're going to have what's left over is a powerful voting bloc? And I don't think so. But I do think that there are people in the Democratic Party today who think that.
By the way, both parties have a problem. You know, the Republican Party, 75% of Republicans are normal Republicans. They believe in America first, and 25% believe in America alone. So Republicans have a challenge from the isolation, the anti-Semitic isolationists, by the way, who are by and large working for our foreign enemies. And the Democrats have a problem, namely a third of their parties taken over by Democrat Socialists of America, Muslim Brotherhood types, who are also working for foreign enemies. So our foreign enemies have basically taken over a solid minority of each party. And each party has to basically throw out that cancer, that foreign agent cancer within their parties. I think the Republicans do it. The Democrats don't have enough intellectual strength, cultural strength to throw out their foreign agents. So we have a problem because our enemies are not so good at physical war, but they're very good at cultural war.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not so good at cultural war, and we have to become better. I have an expression about this. Evil people are good at being evil. Good people are bad at being good. So we have to learn how to be much better at being good in order to compete with the evil forces surrounding us.
You know, sometimes you look at the news and it's like, do we have any hope? But then I'm looking at some of these young people that are coming up, the ones that weren't brainwashed through the public school system. And I have a young man, only 18 years old. He's running the local chapter of the Turning Point USA. And when this kid stands up and he talks, he does it with such knowledge and a quiet charisma, which is very, very stunning. And I see a lot of these kids starting to come up out because they're separating themselves from those that are coming out brainwashed that can't read or write. And there is, for me, I see hope. I don't know. What are you seeing? Are you seeing something the same I'm seeing or no?
Well, take Charlie Kirk. He was one of the top five, if not the top five, of what I call cultural warriors. He knew how to fight a cultural war. And that's why the bad guys went after him, because he was so good at being a cultural warrior. So we need a lot more Charlie Kirks. And if we can't reproduce one Charlie Kirk, hopefully Turning Point USA can reproduce hundreds of little and medium big and eventually very big cultural warriors to fill the shoes, the big shoes left unfilled now with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So Turning Point USA would be a wonderful organization to try to fill that void. And it's very important because in our government, we don't have a Secretary of Culture. Now the bad guys have, they would call Minister of Propaganda. So the bad guys have cultural warriors, but the good guys, we don't have a Minister of Culture or Secretary of Culture, Secretary of Cultural Preservation. So we have to rely on the Charlie Kirk lookalikes to fill the void. And we need hundreds and hundreds of them to spread the message. I mean, the two of you and me, we're little versions, but we need bigger and bigger versions of Charlie Kirk to sway more and more of our younger friends.
Ken, we've got about 5 minutes. Now, I would like to turn to your observations about what's happening with Iran and where is it going.
Okay. Well, again, just to step back for 20 seconds, we're fighting the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues. Now, the Reds are that's communists. That's China, Russia, North Korea, Cuba, among others. The Greens are Iran and Qatar. Muslims are approximately 85% Sunni, the majority. That would be Qatar in the Muslim Brotherhood, and 15% Shiite. That would be Iran. And so the Sunnis and Shiites are always jockeying for position and power. But Iran has this theory. It's called the 12er theory. I call them an Islamo-Nazi death cult. They basically want to create total chaos in the world on the theory that the 12th Imam from 1200 years ago is going to mysteriously appear and save the Muslims and kill all the Christians, Jews, and Hindus. This is a sick, sick ideology. And but Americans don't know that. Americans don't know where Iran is. They don't know that it's a death cult. They don't know that Iran's promised to kill everyone in America 1 million times since 1947. They don't know that America's been fighting Islamism or jihadism for 1,400 years, since Muhammad and his followers declared war on everybody in the year roughly 630. So Americans have been purposely undereducated about the threat, but it's an existential threat. We have to win. There's no compromise here. We have to insist on unconditional surrender. We're in World War III. It's a repeat of World War II. Our parents and grandparents insisted on unconditional surrender of the Nazi death cult and the Japanese death cult. And here we just have our generation has this generation death cult. And we have to be just as strong as our parents and grandparents were.
That's a mouthful being said. I have so many notes I started to write for you and haven't even gone through half of them because you've got the book out called The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, the Pandemic, and Racial Strife. And already, I mentioned Mandami earlier, but already he is the epitome of exactly what you're talking about. There was a gentleman in the ICC, Kareem Khan, that had been a prosecutor over there but got kicked out. He was born in Scotland, but he is Pakistani descent, who put out the arrest warrant for Netanyahu and the, I'm trying to think of the other guy's name, it begins with the V, but his second in command for the military. And that arrest warrant has since been rescinded, but Mandami is calling for him to be arrested the second he steps on American soil, despite the fact that was I'm sorry, my teeth are in backwards today. It was an inaccurate warrant and it was rescinded. He has now the apartment confiscation from landlords. If he feels that you're not running it the way he feels, he can confiscate your property. Gee, isn't that constitutional to be protected in your person papers and property? Then he wants the city stores, which will then put all the local bodegas out in New York City. You have one store for the entire borough to respond to because there'll be no local grocery stores anymore. Gee, doesn't this sound like communism? And you can go on and on about the things he has that, the hotels for immigrants, gee, we're going to go back on. Didn't we have that problem once before where these glorious hotels in Manhattan were just decimated because of the immigrant population that they housed there? And in New York City alone, the attacks on Jews are up 70%. Again, that's a hate crime, which should then be prosecuted under the local laws as well as the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1865. But the question is, why isn't anyone doing anything about this man?
Well, you remind me of World War II. Not that I was there, but just from history books. Hitler, Mandani is basically a little Hitler. And we did nothing about little Hitler in 1933. And then he became a medium-sized Hitler, and then a big Hitler, and then World War II and 60 million dead people. So it's better to go after these little Hitlers while they're little Hitlers and criminalize them then, rather than wait till they create total chaos and death and mayhem and say, oh, yeah, let's fight World War II. So I don't want World War III to be a repeat of World War II. I want to go after these little Hitlers now and criminalize the DSA, Democrat Socialists of America, criminalize the Muslim Brotherhood, go after the Hitlers in the third inning rather than waiting for the ninth inning and then have another 60 million dead people in World War III.
Well, Ken, since our next guest has not shown up yet, I'm going to hold you over. Dan, we're freeform here. There's no clock here. But, we had 100 Democrats just recently voted to end aid to Israel. Israel is actually our closest ally. They're more like us than anything else. And people turn around and say, the young kids, they did a camera going around some local campus and saying, is Israel committing genocide against the Muslims? And to a person, they all said yes. Excuse me, it was the other way around. Wasn't it October 7th, 2 years ago?
Well, that's a technique that the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues are very good at, is they reverse reality. So in other words, the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues are all to varying degrees death cults. And so what they do is they accuse us, in other words, normal people people who believe in the rule of law, Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for everybody. And they criminalize us for being normal. And it's an old technique, and they're very good at it. So on October 7th, Hamas, which is a death cult, working for the Iran death cult, killed 1,200 Israelis through genocide. By the way, they would have killed all 10 million Israelis if they had gotten away with it. But fortunately, the Israeli people and soldiers stopped them from doing it. So they committed the genocide, and then they, in typical red, green, and blue format, they then accused Israel of being guilty of genocide. So now that fools half the people, because when you lie consistently, and then use the media and the social media, and then the influencers and bots and other techniques, you can convince half the people of almost anything. And it's very sad, because Israel is not only America's best ally, I would say it's America's only ally. And Israel's protecting America tremendously. And Israel's protecting Christians tremendously. They're even protecting Sunni Muslims from the Iranian, what I call Islamo-Nazi death cult. So everybody should be thanking Israel, whether you're Christian, Catholic, Sunni Muslim, Hindu, or Jewish. You should be sending thank you note, or the equivalent of thank you notes, to the Israeli government. Thank you so much for protecting us from the Iranian death cult. But many people don't see that, because they've been influenced, maliciously influenced by the false narratives of the Reds, the Greens, and the Blues, who are very good at issuing false narratives.
You know, I'm thinking back all the years, because I've been doing this now 16 years, this one show, and I remember talking about this. Israel, you heard people saying, well, there's no Muslim representation in the Knesset. That's a lie. They do have representation. Matter of fact, they had representation there before the Christians did, because it was under the Obama, not under, but at the time of the Obama administration was there, that they finally let in the Christians in the Knesset. So the Muslims had a greater presence there than before, you know, the Catholics, the Protestants, the Lutherans, whoever else is there. So there's so much misinformation being put out there, but it is purposeful.
Yes, well, I have an expression that evil people slander good people with lies, nonstop. We, good people, have to learn how to slander evil people with the truth. And so that's one of the things that I dedicate myself to, is purposely slandering evil people with the truth. And that's why I call Iran Islamo-Nazi death cult country. I could just call them a Shiite Muslim country, or a Muslim country, or a government. But I call them a death cult, because I don't want to even give them the satisfaction, not that they care what I say, but in my own little way, I don't want to give them the satisfaction of calling them a government, or a legitimate government, or any representative of the country. I think we should use the harshest words possible to characterize our evil enemies, just as they use the harshest words possible to slander us with their lies.
You know, I mentioned earlier that some of the left news outlets were starting to turn more towards our way of thinking. And I pulled up an article, one of the things to talk to you about, believe it or not, from CNN, or as I called it, the Clinton News Network, or the Communist News Network. And it dealt with the agreement that the U.S. is signing with Saudi Arabia that would allow them to enrich nuclear fuel. And they go on and explain everything. And I would say 90% of this article is favorable, in which they're doing this agreement. Now, it's supposed to be for domestic only, for civilian use, not military grade or anything like that. And it's a 30-year deal where we're going to supply them with the technology and the personnel, whatever else. We're not giving them the technology, as I understand it. So do we see a problem with Saudi Arabia, or is this the footprint they want to make the deal with Iran, saying, see, we did this with Saudi Arabia, let's do it with you now?
Well, I think it's a bad idea because Saudi Arabia is not reliable. And if they're reliable today, pretend they are, how do we know they're going to be reliable tomorrow? In the Middle East, regimes come and go. It's not like it. And so also, we have to have a lot of inspections. Now, if we have a lot of inspections of their nuclear cycle, now under the Trump administration, will it be the same under the next administration, the next administration? So just as Saudi Arabia changes over time, American politics changes over time. So I don't trust America to properly monitor the Saudi Arabian nuclear project, and I don't trust Saudi Arabia to properly monitor it, because all you need is to have one lunatic show up, whether it's a lunatic in America or a lunatic in Saudi Arabia, and all of a sudden we find out that they're taking the nuclear waste and reprocessing it into some sort of a bomb or a dirty bomb. So I just don't trust them. Now, if President Trump were on this podcast with us, he would say, I know all that. You don't have to tell me any of this. I know it all. But would you prefer that the evil Russian Empire gives them a nuclear power plant, or the evil Chinese? So the world's better off with having America in charge of the nuclear project rather than our formidable enemies. And he would have a good point on that.
All right.
So,
Go ahead, Dan.
thank you. Ken, you mentioned almost in passing different kinds of bombs, and you mentioned the dirty bomb. Do you think that the American people understand the difference of a nuclear bomb, which is a weapon of mass destruction, and a dirty bomb, which is a weapon of mass disinterruption?
Look, the American public, the answer is no, but it's a bigger issue. The American public is full of good people. And in general, good people don't understand evil people. Sometimes I'm having dinner with someone and they say something naive. And I say, you have a personality defect. And they go, what do you mean I have a personality defect? I said, your defect is that you're good. And they say to me, what do you mean I'm good? That's a personality defect? I said, it's a personality defect because you don't understand evil. So, and that's the basic problem Americans have. We don't understand how evil people can be.
Well, Ken, thank you for joining us. People can find you on Save the West. And again, I urge them to get your book, The Multi-Front War, that people can find up on Amazon. And I think I saw a link on your website too. So
yes.
Ken, thank you. And you're always welcome to join us once again.
Okay, thank you very much. And I should mention, my website's complimentary. Everyone should take advantage of it. I write an article every 2 weeks. They'll get it right to their emails. All they have to do is sign up. SaveTheWest.com.
Okay, Ken, God bless for the hard work you do.
Okay,
Take care.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring in our next victim. I guess he got a little lost coming on. So welcome back, John Gordon. How are you doing?
Good. Lost is my natural habitat.
Well, you have your website is The Truth with John Gordon on .tv.
Just
let me get that
Gordon,
off.
Just JohnGordon.tv.
Yeah, that's what I said. .tv.
Yeah, there's
that right.
There's no truth in that.
Oh, there's your runner. There's your runner.
There's truth throughout it, but the website itself is just JohnGordon.tv.
I have it on the runner correctly. Just the brain part. All right. I mean, there's so much stuff now that we were talking with Ken that can actually flow into what we're doing. But just recently, Trump lost that problem with birthright citizenship in the Supreme Court. However, yesterday, he signed an executive order to turn around and narrowly define it on that. We do expect to see another court challenge on this, but give us your input on how you understand this.
Well, look, the founders did not contemplate that bad acting countries would send people here who were 9 months pregnant to have a child so they could then claim U.S. citizenship and then go back to their country of origin where they intend to live for the next 19 years or 18 years and then return here and show their U.S. passport so they can remain. It is just grossly gaming the system. That's what President Trump is trying to stop. I truly do, and I mean this sincerely. I do believe it is a national security threat based on what the Chinese are doing. And I don't think this is just a one-off here and there. I think that it is a intentional and drastic number of people that have come here, had their babies, claimed U.S. citizenship, gone back to China, and then they want to come back at 18, go to college as U.S. citizens, claim file for student loans, and be dependent on our social services. Worse, we're allowing the enemy to come into our country as citizens, and they would enjoy the right to vote.
Not only the right to vote, but the right to run for office too. So you can probably imagine someone from China becoming the next president of the United States, having never once set foot in the United States until they ran for that election. And that's a scary thought.
Are 1,000% correct. And that is the scary part. Now, what judge in their right mind would strain to find that is in conflict with the Constitution and bend over backwards to accommodate them to be U.S. citizens? I mean, it's just really disgraceful, in my opinion.
Oh man, there's so much to go. I have Dan Perkins with me. He has his own media empire, and I do a podcast with him once a week called Moms Across America. So I roped him in as my guest co-host today. So
Sure.
Dan,
Hi, Dan, how are you?
I'm fine. I've had John on my show before, so I know him a little bit. John, I want to ask you a question, but I want to give you a piece of information. You may already have it. But according to the Department of Education, there's about 380,000 Chinese students in America's colleges and universities now. But their birth rate has declined, and they're headed towards zero growth, and then eventually by 2035 start going the other way. So is there a natural attrition of the number of students that these foreign governments, because this problem of depopulation is in virtually every part of the world and every major country?
Yeah, I was going to say, we're not immune to that either, actually, in
right.
this country.
Right, but would you expect to see the birth rate, as we see it today, of people coming from foreign countries diminish because the number of women having babies is going to diminish? And is it less of a problem?
Well, I didn't excel in math in high school, but I think I can even figure that one out. I think you answered your own question. I mean, if they stop having babies and they're not, producing offspring, then that number surely will go down. And I think that would bode well for us. The problem is, in this country, we've gone from 2 children per family to 1.7. So we're faced with the same
absolutely
task. I don't know. In my own family, I think our children realized how hard it is to raise 3 boys, and 2 of the 3 have just decided, I'm not signing up for that. I saw what torment my parents went through. I really don't know what's going on and why millennials are not having children like our generation did. My oldest son has two children, blessed us with 2 grandchildren. So I don't know. It may just be delayed. Maybe they're going to, all this generation of children or of people are going to start producing babies just later in life. That's a possibility. Or I don't know. Maybe they won't.
I read some social scientists who think by the year 2050, China will have dropped 500 million people in population to about 750 million in the country.
That's an amazing statistic.
Well, the problem is it will be the problem here in the United States and many other countries, You have a much smaller workforce trying to support the retirees, and where do you get the money? And that's a problem for everybody.
Well, I
No, you
think
don't.
the simple answer to that is probably AI is going to make up the difference. It is coming very rapidly, and Tesla has got an Optimus robot that they say is going to be out this year and will be mass produced next year. And I've followed that since day one. This robot has gained skills and speed and dexterity at a very rapid rate. And today, according to Tesla, the Optimus robot has as good of dexterity as a human. And so it's coming. And I can't wait to have my own pet that I can have
Well,
follow me around and I can boss around, because nobody else
is,
in my family will do it.
Let's hope
well,
she's not good looking.
What's that?
well, isn't this exactly what Isaac Asimov wrote back in the 1950s? I, Robot. Did he not just predict this? And in I, Robot, the female in the lead in there, I remember her. She couldn't interact with human to human. She had to do it through a screen, which is what our kids are doing today. No human interaction.
Yeah.
Everything is on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. There's no human interaction. I mean, almost 20 years ago, I had a pastor stop by my house because my husband was ill to talk, and he was doing the youth ministry. He said these kids were coming in, they were looking to do a job interview. They didn't know how to shake hands. They didn't know how to look someone directly in the eye and respond. They couldn't even fill out a job application. This was 20 years ago. Imagine how much that has
Amazing.
decreased today. And now you have a robot that's going to mimic a human being. This is Asimov's I, Robot, honestly.
John, I drive part-time for research for Uber.
Oh,
And I picked up this particular lady from Boston some months ago, and she was in the real estate business, and her specific niche was million square feet warehouses for mass distribution. Their largest customer was Amazon.
mhm.
She told me that Amazon is opening up a new facility in northern Connecticut, over 1.2 million square feet, and it's an experimental warehouse. A normal warehouse of that size would require the hiring of 1,500 people, because the warehouse would be open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. This new warehouse is being built with 15 humans, and all the rest are robots.
Whoa.
And so they have
I'm
50.
not surprised, frankly, and I bet you the warehouse is going to be built in part with robotics, and maybe materials that are built in a factory by robotics and delivered on site and just stood up. It's happening. It's happening right now.
So the company is able to cut 1,480 jobs to staff this new warehouse. They'll take 20 humans, and the rest of them will be robots. And I've seen film of that warehouse and how they're experimenting with it right now. And the robots have the ability to sort just like humans do, but they don't need coffee breaks and they don't get sick. And
They don't need pee breaks.
And they don't have attitude.
they don't have attitudes. That's true. They don't have attitudes.
So
Well,
I think there is cause for optimism on that front. I mean, President Trump has said repeatedly that he has firm commitments from companies both in the U.S. and outside the U.S. to invest a total of $18 trillion in the next 3 years. That is monumental. And that is going to require people to help construct facilities and support that kind of rapid build. And then Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, has said that they have fully, obviously, I mean, they're the number one chip maker in the world, but they have embraced autonomy and robotics as far as they can go. And what they find is that the robot actually becomes an assistant to the knowledge worker. And so it actually has created jobs within NVIDIA. So you've got that at play at the same time. So You know, my crystal ball is kind of cloudy on it. I see light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm not sure whether it's sunshine or a freight train, but we will know pretty clearly in the next year or two, I think, which direction this is going to go.
Oh. Just want to change the subject a little bit here. The left has been going after Trump with his new ballroom, and they're doing anything and everything to try to stop it. Now, you're an attorney, uh, and you actually ran for Attorney General in the state of Georgia. Unfortunately, you didn't win. And on a side note, my Attorney General, Alan Wilson, has now been filing gathering 18 states to go after Fauci for what he has done with the pandemic. Florida recently sent a subpoena over, as I understand, also. I think it's West Virginia and one other state joined them in that. But they're going after Fauci now because we were discussing this, Dan, on your show, Moms Across America.
Right.
He declared the Fifth Amendment 111 times. When he has done that, anything he does after that basically negates the pardon he receives because he's not testifying to what has occurred. He wouldn't have been prosecuted. But by obscuring the facts, and now he can be open to prosecution, especially on the state level. He's only immune from federal prosecution, but now on the state level, state by state, they can go after him for unlawful deaths, unlawful injury to individuals because of the actions he took. Now,
and maliciously, intentionally lying and putting people's lives at risk.
So it makes it lying under oath, so brings it into contempt of court too. So do you see this actually happening? Because I'm also hearing that the DOJ is not going to go after him. They're going to go play it safe and leaves it to the states. But the states, if they don't release the information,
is not going to go after him. I was not aware of that.
Well, I was watching some stuff up, and I watch Newsmax. Honestly, drives my husband crazy.
That's a good network. They're right over
yeah,
here.
drives him crazy. Yeah, it's a good network.
5 miles from where I'm sitting.
Yeah,
they do a good job.
But I was hearing that they were trying to get subpoenas to get the information on Fauci, and I heard there was some like little pull back and forth between the states and the DOJ. Will they release it? Won't they release it? So there is question whether or not the DOJ is going to fully cooperate.
Well, as you know, the Senate did vote this week to hold Fauci in contempt. Now, the pardon does not give him any protection against that whatsoever. And the fact of the matter is, Rand Paul was 100% correct when he said that a pardon is the same as a prosecutor giving someone immunity. That does not relieve them of the obligation to come and respond to a subpoena and answer truthfully. And if they don't answer truthfully, they can be held in not only contempt, but prosecuted for perjury. So in Fauci's case, I've given a lot of thought to this and tried to figure out what in the heck is he thinking? You know, when Josh Hawley asked him, what day is it today? And he said, on the vice of counsel, I've respectfully exercised my right to the Fifth Amendment. Well, there is no Fifth Amendment protection that shields you from responding to what day it is or what color tie you have on.
No, just about against self-incrimination.
And
so you can tell me what the carpet is. There's no harm in that.
Yeah, there's no incrimination. There's that in itself, really, if you want to get down to brass tacks, is perjury. Saying that he is invoking the Fifth Amendment for against self-incrimination because you ask him what day it is, what color the rug is. There is nothing incriminating about answering that question. So to say that you're not going to incriminate yourself is basically saying, really, you're going to obstruct Congress, and you are lying because there's no immunity from answering those benign questions. All right, so why would someone do this?
I never thought of it from that angle. Well, I honestly did not think of that. That's amazing.
So
just for that, he has perjury charges already facing.
Well, can you convince the prosecutor and a jury of 12 men and women to find him guilty of perjury because of that? I don't know. But what I do know is he's probably the most contemptuous individual in the United States of America right now I mean, if People magazine's going to put sexiest man alive on their cover, I think they should put the most despised man alive on their cover. And I don't say that to be mean. I say that because I lost 8 people that I knew in varying degrees of friendship to COVID. I can name them. And it touched me to my core. Two of them one of them was very close, a very close friend, a great athlete, was not, I mean, he was elderly. That's the only ailment he had, like me. I'm just getting old. I don't have any ailments that I know of, other than everything aches when I wake up in the morning. But aside from that, he was in perfect health. And he took the booster. The 2 people that really got my attention were the last 2 people that died with COVID and symptoms for the shot. And they both took the booster, and they both died resulting from injuries from a stroke.
Man,
And
we're
so,
down to our last 2 minutes here, John. We're gonna have to have you back real soon. So we don't have. We had technical difficulties from the moment I tried to sign it. So you're not the only one.
oh, well,
So
I'm
don't
sorry.
feel bad.
Friday's
Because
not
Dan will
supposed to be
attest
that
to
way.
it.
Friday's
I
supposed to be
don't
a
have
happy
it.
day.
I don't have it that bad. And Dan knows I do the podcast with him, Moms Across America. Every once in a while we have a little glitch, but
Can I just
today
finish
was
my
just
thought real quick? I think it's fear of the deep state that prevented Fauci from talking. I think that he can name names. I think he can take us right to the puppet master. And I think that's why they won't let him talk. And by gosh, we want to know. We demand him come clean. And if not, lynch him in the public town square. I'll hold the rope. I'm serious.
Look at me.
I'm
I know
serious.
there's a lot of people that want to hold that rope for him.
Yeah,
A lot
all
of
right.
people. Well, people can find you on John Gordon TV. .tv.
Yes.
The runners going across the bottom because you have your podcast, Truth with John Gordon. I really needed more time with you
I
because
would
I've
love
got a
people
stack of questions here I haven't gotten to.
I would love people to come follow us on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, and just look for John Gordon Truth. And you can email me at johngordontruth@gmail.com. Thank you.
Fantastic, John. God bless. And
Thank
we
you.
will have you back very soon. I'll get a hold of Kim.
You're
You
very
take care.
kind. Thank you.
All right. Dan, that's it for today. I'm sorry with all the technical difficulties we had. I had things flashing on the screen that shouldn't have flashed. But you
Not a
know what I
problem.
will do is here's your book cover. There we go. Democratic Murder of America, the demagoguery of the first degree. Dan Perkins and Sheriff Richard Mack that you can get through your website, which is murderofamerica.com.
.com.
Okay. All right, Dan. I will be talking with you Wednesday as we do one of your podcasts, Moms Across America. So thank you for being patient and hanging out. So thank you again. You're a good
Thank
buddy.
you. It's always a pleasure. Take care.
All right. Now, next week we'll have our friend Bernadette on talking about what had occurred with her when she lost her son and what is she going through today. There's a lot going into this, so be ready. Be back with us next week, same bat time, same bat station. Remind you to go to my website, which is southernsense.net. And if you want to protect your income and your money, click on the links that I have there for Revelation Gold and check them out. If you may only have a couple of bucks to invest, they can handle it. It doesn't have to always be with people that have $100 million in the bank. So check it out, southernsense.net. Until that time, I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.